Dustborn just can't seem to catch a break. They are the quintessential definition of a dude stepping on a rake and whacking himself in the face everywhere he turns. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Smash JT. And between Red Thread Games, the developer, and the publisher of it, Quantic Dream, where they're all issuing these statements and supporting each other and blaming you, the customer, and at the end of the day, it all goes back on them, and they're not willing to take any accountability for their actions, so they just end up blaming the community. So more people start digging, and more people start finding more information about what's going on with this company. What is Dustborn? Why are they being tax funded by the EU and America and other places where they're getting all this money from instead of where it should be coming from? The people playing the game, the consumer, the people that want to purchase a product from you. And because the epicenter of how this game got created in the first place started, it shows a lack of passion, a lack of effort. A game that seems to exist just to push a political agenda. Propaganda for Antifa, some have even called it. But at the end of the day, what Dustborn has turned into is the laziest asset flip in the modern era of, in this case, I guess, AA gaming? Hit that subscribe, give me a like, and check out smashjt.com for the full article talking about how Dustborn is the laziest asset flip of a game that I have seen in modern times, at least coming from a supposed professional organization, because this game is anything but that. Red Thread Games, the developer of Dustborn, continues to spiral deeper into controversy as more information of the game's creation keeps coming to light. Initially, the game piqued some mild interest due to the unique narrative premise, as one of those just kind of want to know how bad it is kind of games, like people were curious. But as more information has come to light, it reveals a far lazier, almost comically disastrous side of game development. But before I even get into that, let's jump back to the previous coverage on this, where I talked about how Hey Slick, that's me, posted to Twitter how they found some conspicuous photos of why these apartments looked exactly like the apartments in Grand Theft Auto 5, and they were like, hey, that's kind of weird, kind of interesting. They were almost wondering if they were ripped straight from Grand Theft Auto 5 without authorization from Take-Two, and if they were just stealing it one for one. Turns out that's not what was happening. But what was happening is honestly almost as bad. The assets weren't technically stolen. It's been discovered that the apartment layout in question was purchased from an artist known as Oriordaz. But here's the kicker. Oriordaz openly admitted that their design was just using GTA 5 as a reference, and legitimately looks like they just ripped it one for one. So what this artist did was look at Grand Theft Auto 5, look at the apartments and say, okay, I love that layout. I'm going to reference that and create my own model, and then I will sell it based off of what I see here to make sure it looks like an apartment should look. I'm going to rip it straight from Grand Theft Auto 5, which is fine. That happens in gaming. People borrow things all the time and use things for inspiration. I'm not going to knock that. But the fact that the Dustborn developer Thea Berg was so on the offensive against people daring to question this raised a lot more eyebrows than they probably would have liked. The apartment layout in Dustborn was not an original creation, or even a unique asset. It was a second-hand copy, borrowing directly from the iconic Grand Theft Auto 5. And while utilizing third-party assets is definitely not uncommon in game development, especially for indie studios on tight budgets, what makes this situation so insane is how Red Thread Games attempted to cover their tracks, and how they cut corners while taking government funding and tax dollars to fuel the game that they were clearly in over their head with, and they didn't want people to find out about it. So instead, they started lashing out at you and the entire gaming community at large. They didn't want anyone asking any questions. And as I spoke about in my previous video covering this, Thea Berg, one of the developers, tweeted what seemed like embarrassment out there, perhaps rightfully so. Her approach only highlighted how the studio cut corners during development, but it also pointed to a fundamental lack of experience and competence in handling a project's demand, aka they bit off way more than they could chew. They were in over their heads, and they were trying their best to pretend they knew what they were doing when making a video game because they had so much money given to them, they had to produce something. And sure, you could hear that and be like, okay, yeah, whatever, it happens in game design. They purchased this asset from a guy who ripped it from Grand Theft Auto 5, and okay, maybe they didn't know about that and they were just trying to cut corners and make it seem like they were knowing what they were doing, and we'll let that slide. And then it comes to light that more stuff was ripped. And this thing is so embarrassing, I don't even know where to start with it.
Look, those are the towers. What the hell? And this is supposed to be a dystopian future?
As if the Grand Theft Auto 5 copy-paste job wasn't bad enough, another discovery has emerged thanks to Path of Radiance 2 that seemingly defies all logic. There's something odd in the game's background. What do you notice when you look at this picture? Yeah, those are the Twin Towers. The World Trade Center is still standing. Has to make you wonder, the game's developers had purchased and used assets so old that they potentially predate 9/11, 2001. We're in 2024 right now. How does that happen? Think about this for a second. The game released in the modern era, using assets from a time before one of the most defining moments in history. The laziness and lack of diligence on display here are beyond embarrassing. Red Thread Games didn't even bother to ensure that their assets they purchased were even up to date, let alone relevant or of sufficient quality for a modern game. They just literally ripped a background from something that they most likely purchased because, God, I hope they didn't create this on their own accidentally, because that would mean they're even more out of touch than we gave them credit for. They purchased a generic background of New York, not even noticing that the Twin Towers were still there. And yeah, I get it. There are some people that are saying, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like, whatever, they made a slight mistake. And I'm like, no, hold up. First off, that is so anti-American, it's not even funny. Like, that's one of the most defining things that's ever happened in the country in our lifetime. And we're supposed to just be like, oh, they made a slight mistake by just using a background from before 2001 and they didn't notice. Like, this is one of the things that comes out of having a studio in Norway, not America, make a game about America trying to be an Antifa simulator to indoctrinate people to be anti-government. That is one of the biggest issues coming out of all of this. And we're supposed to just be like, whatever, they made a slight mistake because they're not from here. With all the info coming to light, Red Thread Games and their publisher Quantic Dream are now scrambling and failing massively with everything else they do, of course, to control the narrative. They're trying their best to tell you you're the problem and that they're just trying to make a game and they're just doing what everyone else did, when in reality, they straight up stole tax money, put what they would call a game out there, and are complaining to the community for you not purchasing it, which is one of the most embarrassing, ridiculous attacks on the gaming community I have seen in recent memory. It has to make you wonder why they're not just owning this and taking the L, instead of taking accountability for what has increasingly become what looks like a money-grabbing scheme. The developers seem more focused on defending their decisions with paper-thin excuses. But at its core, the entire debacle reflects a much deeper problem: the misuse of public funding for a project built on laziness, shortcuts, and an astonishing lack of creativity or accountability. Red Thread Games' lack of transparency, their reliance on outdated assets, and their attempts to pass off a poorly cobbled together project as something more substantial has resulted in what might be considered the laziest double-A asset flip of a game in recent memory. It's embarrassing, it's pathetic, and yeah, this is valid criticism. I am not attacking your developers. I'm not attacking the publisher. I'm calling it like I see it, which is something you will try your best to twist into attacks, and how this valid criticism is me just coming at you because I'm an evil gamer, when in reality, you cannot be accountable for your own actions. And that's exactly why you're hiding from people right now. You're shutting off replies. You're not letting people voice their concerns or opinions. You want your echo chamber and you want to blame gamers. But I and many other people out there are just not having it, and you guys look even worse with how you're doubling and tripling down on your side of things instead of just owning up to what amounts to a lazy asset flip that ends up stealing government funds. I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want more information, check out smashjt.com for the full article breaking down everything that I've found about just how lazy this company really is. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you appreciate what I'm doing, hit that join button, and as always, you stay smashing.
Smash J.